Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. That's my travel gavel. Welcome to, we actually having a joint meeting tonight between the Stoughton School Committee and the Board of Selectmen. Today is February 12th, 2014. It's now 7:05, and I'm just going to call the Selectmen's meeting to order. Ms. Hussaini?
Likewise, I'd like to open the school committee meeting, joint meeting for February 12th. Call to order the school committee portion. Thank you.
If you would, if everybody could please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I had talked to the chair of the school committee just a little early, and I want to suspend the consent agenda, and I'd like to get right to the original purpose of the meeting, which is to appoint or interview for an appointment to the Southeastern Regional School Committee. So without further ado, Ms. Zoll, if you want to take a seat at the end. And
Yeah.
if you'd like to, actually, why don't we pass her?
She has one.
You got one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd like to just introduce yourself and maybe explain why you're interested in the position and so forth, and then we can open it up to the two boards.
Okay. My name is Robin Zoll. I've been a resident of Stoughton for it's going to be 29 years. I have a background as a math teacher as well as an accountant. I worked for the past 7 years doing an MCAS program up at Stoughton High School. And I think the reason why I want to do the regional school committee is that I saw a lot of the students being a little aimless. The kids who go to comprehensive high school, many of them don't really know what they want to do with the rest of their lives. Not that everybody does and a lot of these kids really don't enjoy the academics as much, or they don't see a purpose, especially their favorite question in math class is, what am I ever going to use this for? Which of course would really get me upset. But the whole thing is that I think if they're in some of these kids, if they could use their hands and be in a voc tech environment, maybe they would see the purpose of math and all their other subjects and science, and hopefully they would see the other subjects, become a good citizen or whatever. But I think that a lot of kids just have no idea what they want to do with the rest of their lives, and we need good plumbers and electricians and carpenters. All those jobs that can't be outsourced have to be done here. And I think that some kids just need that type of education. And it doesn't preclude college, because I'm hearing more and more kids coming out of vocational schools and going on for further education. So I think it's a really good alternative for a lot of students. So that's basically my ideas.
Right, Mr. Senior, if you want to.
Well, I was going to say, I would open it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer if you want to open it to your committee, and I open it to the board for any questions of.
I will open it, thank you, to my committee, and Ms. Sauvanet, the first question.
Thank you so much for applying for this really important position. My dad was a carpenter and was a voc tech teacher for many decades.
Oh,
so that kind of education is very near and dear to my heart. And I also recognize that there are, that there are different learning styles, and
people learn in a variety of ways, including hands-on learning. But here's a question I have for you, is that beyond the usual kind of carpentry and plumbing and those really important skills, what do you see as the future direction of vocational education? What are the possibilities? Yeah.
Well, I think there's more stuff with computers and IT that maybe they have to emphasize, because, for example, I brought my son's car in for service yesterday, and I was talking to the owner of the shop, who happens to be a college graduate, and we were talking. He was talking about all the computers and the codes and how so much more complicated auto mechanics are than they were years ago. So I think that these kids need more of an understanding of computers, etc. And we need a lot of people to, you know, build some of the electronics that, you know. And I mean, I think some of even some forms of engineering, you know, could be in the more in the vocational ed department. You know, my son is an engineer, and one of the questions he was asked on a lot of interviews was, can you repair a car? Which, unfortunately, coming from mechanically challenged parents, the answer was clearly no. But those skills would have been helpful to him had he, you know, had them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My brother John actually graduated from Southeastern with his concentration, whatever you call it, is his certificate was in metal fabrication, which is not what he does. But my concern is getting the message to those children that you're talking about. I don't know. I know that Southeastern has open houses, but you don't go to an open house if you don't have already an idea. I mean, you would go to an open house if you already had a curiosity about what's available. But some people have no idea. They couldn't find the school. They have no idea that the transportation is provided free, that it's free, and what's available. How do we get the kids in the 8th grade here in Stoughton to know what's available over there I mean, I don't think we're going to send 100, well, I guess we do send 100 altogether, but every year we send maybe 25 or 30 from a class. And how do we get the other kids to know, oh, here's a place where I might fit in?
Yeah. No, that's definitely a problem. I think that they need to spend more time on outreach and PR, that people have to know what programs are available, and maybe have some, I don't know if they could have field trips or whatever from the middle school and show them the shops, because yeah, you're right, most of the kids have never seen Southeastern and they don't know what's available. And I think there's a perception about voc ed, especially amongst the kids who are academically stronger, who won't even think about a voc-tech, but maybe it is a skill they can use. And I mean, it doesn't preclude going to college. Many kids now are going to college from voc-tech. So.
Well, at graduation, they have college scholarships available.
Right. So
the other thing that, because Southeastern is connected with the TI,
right,
and they're really seem to be coming into the service type things, hairdressing, nails,
right,
some of the other things. For folks who have already gotten their high school diploma or whatever,
right,
and there's a cost involved in this, it's
right,
not free. And computer courses, and they have, I believe they have an HVAC program. Well, how do we get the folks in Stoughton who have been unemployed for a long time and are considering, well, maybe I should change my career. Maybe what I studied, there isn't much relevance for anymore. Whatever kind of widget I make, they're making in Bombay now, and I need to make a change. How do we get, and I asked Mr. Lopes the same thing, how do we get those folks to find out that this is available? It chills me that people go into debt to take those hairdressing courses at those beauty academies when they, for far less, for about 1/10 of the cost, could go there And part of the program at the TI is that they get you your certificate, or they help you
Right.
get your certificate. They don't just say, okay, you're on your own. How do we get the word out?
Well, I think we need to work with the guidance counselors in Stoughton, both middle school for the high school level and also for the TI. I think we need to work with the guidance department and sort of look at some of these kids and sit down with them. I mean, I think what I always found was heartbreaking is when you have a kid who struggles in school. I mean, I saw a lot of kids who were not lower performing, and they struggle, and yet they say they want to be a pediatrician. And I said, that's very nice, but you realize in order to get into college and then get into middle school, you're going to have straight A's. They don't realize that they have to set their goal at a level that is attainable. And I think, I'm not saying we have to say that, this is all you can do, but show them that there are options of very good jobs that could take something that's of interest to them and guide them that way. Because I think that's one of the problems, but you're right. And I think sometimes with the adults in the community, maybe that could be done through the library.
One of the things we saw at the meeting the other night on the master plan was that folks in Stoughton have a higher percentage of our folks in the construction trade, and that we're not talking minimum wage. People were earning over $1,000 a week. I think a lot of us think that construction, well, it used to be taken, here's a hammer, here's a nail, and it goes over there. Mr. Chairman, I'm hogging the stage. Obviously, Ms. Zoll will be getting into this. Southeastern used to have a 5th grade program where they took our 5th grade, especially the girls, over, and they made a shop project, things like that, to kind of get them in the aware earlier than 8th grade.
Yeah. Another thing, speaking of that, I remember my son did do it for 2 weeks when he was in middle school age. I know that Blue Hills has a program, a summer workshop type thing, where the kids can do and take these fun little courses for 2 weeks. And it's very, they're showing off their shops, etc. And maybe if Southeastern had a program like that, the kids could be exposed to it and think, well, this is a lot of fun. Maybe this is someplace I really would like to go. And open that up to the kids, because you're right. I think a lot of kids just don't, they just pass from year to year, and they just never think that maybe there's an alternative to, going to 9th grade, then flunking half their courses, unfortunately, and not having that any sort of goals or aims or whatever. I think if they see the value in their education, they'll do better in their academics as well as their vocational classes.
I know that the first Southeastern female graduate of automotive was from Stoughton.
That's good.
Dr. Earl?
Thank you for coming. I will piggyback my initial question on Ms. Selectwoman Walsh's comment. This year, or was it last year, I have an 8-year-old son and an 11-year-old son, and I took them to the open house. Oh, sorry. I took them to the open house. Now they both want to go to Southeastern. So once you get the kids in there, the school
Right.
sells itself. It's because it's like, everything is like Legos, playing
Yeah.
with hands-on, great
Yeah,
food.
it's fun.
I was going to approach it from the other side, because sometimes I get calls from parents who want to send their kids to Southeastern, but the capacity is limited. I think they have like a room for 1,300 students. We have the former school committee member here. She could correct me if I'm wrong. And it is kind of hard to get in. And there is a policy. It's a transparent policy. I looked at it for some other parents. It's published on their website. They look at 5 different criteria, and then they rank applicants based on their criteria. And admit students according to that. So my question is, and then there is also impending legislation that would change that admission criteria to a lottery system. How would you feel about, what would you feel is the best approach of doing it, and how would you go about making it happen?
That's interesting. I mean, a lottery obviously is fair, but you're going to waste, or is there potential of wasting slots for kids who really want it on kids who are, maybe, you know, I really don't like it here, maybe I'll like it here. I don't want to see that happen. I want to see highly motivated kids. So I think maybe the acceptance still on criteria is a better idea, that at least you're getting the highly motivated kids. Maybe have X number of slots available more on a lottery system to allow for those kids who are a little aimless, and maybe this will give them the chance to, you know, find something that they don't know they want. But it's hard when there is a limited number of spots. And one thing I was thinking about, and I don't know if it's possible, with the potential of a new high school in Stoughton, if there was any way that maybe Southeastern could have a satellite program in Stoughton in the new high school. You know, that would open up more slots for kids who are not really ready for a full voc tech program, but some sort of halfway. And it would also give the kids more opportunities.
I had one more question. Should I ask now, or we're going to take?
I'm
turns?
okay
I
with
don't
you
want-
asking
okay.
now.
The other question that, I mean, I'm asking these, they are sort of rhetorical questions for you to think about, you know, when you are performing your job duties as a Southeastern school representative, I mean, school committee member. The other, think about, if you look at the demographics of the students, like the low income or high needs, Southeastern demographics is a lot more difficult than the Stoughton demographics. On the other hand, you know, our town meeting is so generous to us. We spend above the net school spending, whereas Southeastern spends just the minimum required net schools spending. So
Yeah, that bothered me. I was looking at some of the numbers and a couple of things, and obviously I don't know what the formula is on how they proportion each town's assessment, because I took the total assessment and I went ahead and divided by the total number of students,
Won't work.
and then took our you know, and then saw how many students were in each community. And I found out that Brockton was probably paying about $2 million less
that's
than
true.
what they should be paying if you did it on a per pupil basis. And we're paying about $500,000
So
more.
that's because you know, because Brockton is a poorer town,
Right.
state contribution is larger than
Yeah.
ours. But you know, one thing to consider is you know, our superintendent prepared you know, sort of prospectus for the budget this year, and she argues that the student achievement is correlates rather nicely with the expense above the net school spending. So then, because we are talking about how to best educate Stoughton schools, and the Southeastern Regional is also public school, and those are our kids. So I wouldn't be against you know, increasing maybe the spending we have on the Southeastern schools.
Yeah, I was surprised when I looked at the per pupil, and I don't know what the state contribution is. And I know that the state generally gives more to regional schools, and I'm sure they probably are more generous towards the voc techs than they are to comprehensive high schools. But I was surprised that the per pupil was as low as it was for Southeastern, considering I would think it would be more costly because of all the equipment, et cetera, to educate at a voc tech, because they have to obviously do that, but they also have to duplicate to a degree the regular high school curriculum. So I was surprised about that. But And then I do feel that Stoughton needs, you know, having been at the high school, I think Stoughton per pupil is pretty low.
Do you have on your side questions?
I think it's great that you applied for this. I know you, and anyone who's watching this meeting has anything but a sense of your dedication
Thank you.
and enthusiasm for this opportunity for the town. They're not watching the same meeting I'm attending. So
Right.
I think it's great that you're doing it. My brother is a carpenter, went to vocational high school. He loves what he does. He was playing with wood from the time he was little. If there was a stick of wood in the basement, he would turn it into something. And I really understand the focus of life on things that are different from what you might get in the regular high school. I hope you can come back and talk to us as you get familiar with that school about something I'm concerned about, which is functional literacy in society and the workplace. And by that I mean the ability of people in everyday life to figure things out in things systems that are more complicated, that are turning around quicker, where people are out there trying to take advantage of all of us, the ability to read, to do math, to think, critical thinking, self-respect, that is the courage to stop for a minute and not be pressured, are all things that I think are vital and skills that have to be really polished up at the high school. They may not shine yet, but they really need to start to get buffed at the high school level. And sometimes I think this might be unfair, but sometimes I think for students who go to vocational technical high schools, there's a misperception about the capacity of those students. I know from my own family experience how off that perception is. So I'd like you to come back and tell us, because I know these folks in the school department are paying a lot of attention to that. And as a community, I'd like us to be very aware of that in the vocational high school, because of the perceptions that I think are unfair that children who go to that school somehow go there, forgive me for saying this, with a little less to work with than people in the mainstream high school. I know that's not true. But as a result of how it works through the system, I'm concerned that we may not be paying enough attention in curricula that are not designed to push kids up into a college system, to have these students ready for what is not always a friendly place in the cold, cruel outside world. First jobs, I'm familiar with exploitation of people in first jobs, misuse, mishandling, underpayment, all those things that happen. And so I hope you can come back and tell us what your observations are of the kind of programming at the vocational school for this, and ways as a community that we can work on that. It's never going to be as good as we could make it.
No, it never will. I mean, I think what I've been impressed with, I think the MCAS scores were higher for the voc techs than I would have thought, because I mean these kids are at a disadvantage. They're doing academics only half the time, the pure academics only half the time, because it's 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out, and so they are getting their regular academics at a compressed rate. I mean, some of these kids can well handle it. Some of these kids, they're highly motivated, And as I say, I hear more and more kids coming out of vocational technical schools, going on to college, some into fields like engineering, other fields, culinary is big. I mean, a lot of people go to Johnson and Wales, et cetera, out of the voc techs. So, I mean, I think that hopefully they are being, but you're right, the financial literacy and all that stuff that the kids don't understand, and they are taken, but I think, to be honest, even college graduates are being taken care of,
We're
taken
being-
advantage of when they get out of school.
We're all being taken advantage of.
Absolutely. I
Um,
mean,
Where I am seeing it mostly because of the work I do is if I'm in a courthouse and I'm watching, it doesn't matter if it's small, if I'm watching a small claims case or wherever it is, I am impressed by the number of people who work in the trades,
oh yeah.
who apparently didn't go much further if they did go past their high school. And the difficulty that they're young adults mostly, these difficulties these young adults have at navigating their way. Now, the legal system is not really, I
Yeah.
mean, the compass for the legal system is always spinning, but even to navigate their way through simple questions and simple steps to fill out forms, they're challenged. And I've got to figure that part of the thing that's not happening in the formal education is some support for daily functional literacy. That's where I'm coming from.
You know, it's funny. I have a son who is an engineer, and he's extremely responsible with money. But I've noticed the kids fall into two categories. Either they spend every penny they make and more, or they hoard. And I right now have the hoarder.
Good.
Well,
But
they
he's
spend
got
every
to
penny
learn-
you give them and hoard their own.
That's how it works.
Or they don't buy what they need to, so you feel like
Same thing.
you really need that new pair of shoes and you're not going to buy it, so I will.
I don't want to take, but
no, it's-
I
you're right,
wanted
they
to ask
don't
you
know
to get
how
back
to.
to us, because
Yeah.
I think as a community, that's a responsibility that we need to pay sharper attention to.
Yeah, I know at the high school they're starting financial literacy because these kids have no idea how to handle credit cards. They don't even know how to read a pay stub.
Yeah.
I mean, they have no idea about the deductions from their paycheck, etc.
Yeah.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
the biggest shock is when they get a job is when they see what comes out of their check every week.
Dr. Brown?
Sure. How you doing? How
Hi.
you doing, Robin?
That's fine.
I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what he just says. I have two questions. I sure will.
You got my sign, yeah?
It's on.
It's on.
Yeah, but the mic is only
For them, yeah.
Okay, for the I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's not.
I have two questions for you, Robin. And it kind of pertains to piggyback off of his question. As a board member, how do you propose to reach students who are interested, first of all, in vocational education versus a college academic route? And how are you assured that they're getting the component of literacy, as he's saying, and how is it being met? How can you assure me as a parent who wants to put my kid in the school, and as an educated
If they're going
parent,
to get
that they're going to get the literacy to push them on, just in case they do want to go to college
right.
after the voc tech? What would you do as a board member to assure that this happens?
I think I'd want to, have a chance to see what the curriculum is there versus in Stoughton High or any of the other high schools in the district to, see that it is somewhat comparable. I mean, I know there are going to be some gaps. I mean, you're talking about spending less time.
Should there be gaps, though?
In a perfect world, no. In reality, if you're spending, I mean, I notice the school day is longer, and hopefully that contributes to a little bit more time in the academic curriculum, because you are being taken out of the academics for 2 weeks at a time to work on the voc tech skills. And where they're really important, you hopefully can make sure that they they do align. Other thing I know is that
What would you do to assure this?
Well, I know that at Blue Hills, because I happen to have a friend who has a child at Blue Hills, they're starting AP classes there. They have an AP history class, because I was talking to a mother whose child is a senior, and she's applying right now to colleges, and she's applying to Bentley and Babson and, you know, schools that are somewhat rigorous and, you know, not that easy to get into. And so obviously she's getting a fairly good academic background. You know, in order for the kids to progress in their voc skills, if they're not doing well in their regular academics, then I think, you know, we have to say you can't stay in this program. There are so many limited spots, and we could make, you know, obviously give other kids an opportunity who will put the time in both programs. I mean, that's the best we can do.
Or if they really want this as their career, how can you support them making sure this happens?
Well, I think apprenticeships would be, you know, good. I mean, going to some of the local businesses, and I assume they do right now, and, you know, place a kid in a carpentry shop or whatever. I know that growing up, I used to see this. I remember there was a house being built on the next street that was being built by the kids in the Voc Tech, and they were and obviously they come out of school with real world experience. You know, they might have to go into an apprenticeship program or a journeyman, you know, become a journeyman plumber, electrician, or whatever. They're not going to be ready to just open their own business the day that they leave. And certainly they probably wouldn't have the accounting skills to do it.
I guess as an educator, I'm more concerned about the educational component of it.
Yeah.
How would they read or write? How would they go to court and fill out an application if they're looking for something in court? How would they defend themselves? So I'm looking for something answering that area. And to piggyback on that, how will you support them to stay and complete the certificate program? We can get them in there.
Yeah.
How are we going to maintain it that they stay and complete this so that they do have a future out here in the real world? So those are the questions I guess I need answered to make sure that those children are being educated as they are in the traditional educational environment.
Well, I'm going to throw it back, unfortunately, and I know they're starting financial literacy now at Stoughton High, but unfortunately, and you as an educator, there are so many kids coming out of regular academic high schools without those skills, and that doesn't make it any. That does not make it right. But I don't know. Somehow we have to engage these kids more, get them excited about the learning.
How?
How? Well, hopefully, if they see that they're on a path that's going to lead them to something. You know, we have so many kids who are aimless in society. And unfortunately, a lot of it comes from homes that are not as supportive as they need to be. But we need to, you know, let them know that, you know, you're going to come out of school. You're not going to be working at McDonald's flipping burgers. You're going to be making, you know, $20 an hour or whatever it is right out of school, which to them seems like a small fortune. But, you know, you can't, you know, you have more of an opportunity than maybe your friend who's, you know, been fooling around in school, not getting anywhere, and is going to end up flipping burgers. I mean, these are kids who will have the opportunity to have jobs that we desperately need, that will not be outsourced to somewhere else, because a plumber has to do the work in your house or in the business. They're not, you know, somebody from India is not doing their job. These are good paying jobs that can't be outsourced, and that's really important. But yeah, I know what you're saying about the academics. It's very important, and, you know, hopefully whatever can be done to enhance the curriculum. You know, look, some of these kids are not going to be excited about certain subjects, and that's going to be the same anywhere they go. But hopefully, if they have good teachers and the curriculum is exciting, and they can see real world tie-ins. You know, one of the problems with being a math teacher, and the kids would say, well, what am I going to use this for? Well, a voc tech can see, a voc tech student might be able to see that the handicap ramp has to be at a certain slope. You know, maybe they need the trigonometry to do it.
I'm going to just finish at this. And as the board member, you're going to ensure that the education component of this is being taken care of by hiring the teachers and everybody who are dedicated to making sure these things happen for these students. Because they're not throwaway students. They're just students
No.
with different choices.
Right. It's a different path, and it's a path that is giving these kids another opportunity.
Selectman question?
Mr. Kubrow.
Well, that kid runs into the room again.
And he will.
Sorry, Eric. Hi, Robin. How are you?
Hi.
I'm glad you applied.
Thank you.
Makes it easy. I'm going to focus on something I focused in on when we had a report from Southeastern Regional back, was it 2-3 months ago, maybe? Something that I was very impressed with, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. I think I've chirped about this to Deborah too a couple times too. One of the problems today, particularly, is because of the downturn in the economy that started back a few years ago, and the way we've been sort of sluggish along, and then that's not the topic of the day, but the people who have really suffered in the job market are young people, and primarily it's the first job that's the toughest. So when we got a report on the co-op program from Southeastern, I was very impressed. Actually, I was reading through it to refresh my memory about it. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it because actually I think it's fantastic. And so have you ever heard of Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel was one of the angel investors of, you name it, PayPal, Facebook, Yelp, you know, all these wonderful companies. He has a program that he calls the Thiel Fellows. It's 20 under 20 or something, where he pays, actually some people call it bribes, 20 kids, 20 years old each year to drop out of college. He pays them $100,000 a year to start their own company. And his whole premise is that some kids, it makes no sense for them to sit in college and learn Chaucer when they can be in the job market. It's a waste of talent. Like, for example, Bill Gates, college dropout. Mark Zuckerberg, I think he was a college dropout, which isn't, you know, any. So I guess, you know, I'm veering off, but you know, I believe in the dynamic education in that sense, and the cooperative program I think is important. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, cooperative I mean, it's good for a student to have an opportunity, number one, to get experience before they leave whatever school they're in. I mean, internships in college has become more and more important, hands-on education. The other thing is that it's good for a kid to see before they finish whatever program it is that they like what they're going to do. You know,
Yeah, true enough.
I remember when we were looking at schools, for my son, there was a program that looks very interesting. It was a 5-year program, and you would end up with 2 degrees, but you started out in more of a liberal arts school and then went towards engineering. And I said, that's really all well and good, but he's not going to know until his, you know, you're going to finish 3 years in a program. This one was with Clark University, and it was going to be either WPI, Columbia, or Washington University in St. Louis, which are all excellent schools. And it looked like a really good program. And I said, but he's not going to see engineering until he's in his already in his 4th year. He'd have 3 years of general liberal arts and probably a major in something like physics. But what happens if he doesn't like it? You know, he suddenly is in his 4th year, taking his very first engineering course, and finds out he doesn't want it. You know, that's a little late to sort of change your focus. So I think that's where the advantage of a cooperative situation is good, because you know that you either like it or you don't like it. But yeah, cooperative education, I mean.
I always remember, you know, doing my very first resume, and maybe some other people do, and you're sort of, you know, writing your job description for your, you know, you're making a guy who made sandwiches at D'Angelo's for his first job, which was me, and suddenly I was a technician of some sort. So, you know, so I like the idea of the co-op that gives them that sort of lift into the job market that we're not giving kids these days, and that's why I thought it was important back when we got the report from Southeastern. And I only highlight it to you because that's when you come up in front of us, the Board of Selectmen next year. That's my first question probably going to be.
What are they doing?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's really good when kids get to see hands-on, that it's not just theory, I'm actually doing this, I'm actually seeing what happens.
Can I ask you, I was going through your resume, and you have teaching background, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Kids different today than they were when you were teaching, and how so?
The kids, yeah. The kids are different, they have more distractions.
Good way.
I wish they had never invented Facebook, because the kids are on their phone.
The kids?
Yeah. underneath the desk, they're on their phone and they're texting away and they're on Facebook. And of course, Facebook can be very dangerous because they can be passing rumors. Instead of it taking, 3 days for the rumor to get around, it's around in 30 seconds.
It is.
And I think parents, unfortunately, have more outside, whether it's jobs or whatever, and the kids aren't getting as much attention. I was fortunate enough to have a stay-at-home mom. My son did for a while, and I think it was different than it is today. And things have just gotten more intense. But yeah, I mean, kids, I don't know if kids have changed, but the outside world has changed.
Thank you. It's nice to have someone so thoughtful. Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Delinsky.
Robin, thank you for applying for the position. I just got a couple of quick questions, and one of the statements I was concerned about, what you said earlier, was the number of students going from Stoughton to Southeast Regional. Is there a quota system?
I don't think there is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would hope it would be just, who can qualify. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, and the second question I had is graduation rate. What is the graduation rate out of Southeast Regional? Do you have any idea?
I don't know.
94%.
Way up there.
Yeah.
Is it?
Way up there. Dropout rate is very, very low. So it's very low in any of those types of schools.
Very good. All right. Thank you,
No,
Robin,
you're
through the
welcome. You're
voice. I like the way you threw your voice to the other side of the room.
Thank you.
Just another
I
talent.
want to answer every
Yeah.
single question there is.
Yeah.
By the way, she's very easy to talk to.
Hmm?
Could be
Yeah.
a great resource to you.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know that.
Career off afterwards.
Mr. Encivino.
I'll defer to you.
We've asked a great deal of
Yes.
questions. The only thing I'd really like you to fill in for me is you'll be working with the board, pretty much the size of the board that you see
Right.
at this combined boards
Yeah.
at this table, and working with a very large budget. And just if you could highlight where in your experience, past experience, whether it's been different committees you're on or jobs that you've had, where that you can bring that to the table.
Well, one of the things I did do in a prior life was I was a forensic accountant,
Yes.
which was a term that didn't exist then. But I basically audited insurance claims or whatever, but obviously having an MBA and having an accounting background, I can understand the balance sheet
Good.
and all the financial statements. So, I think unlike
Don't say
unlike
that.
some of the people at town meeting,
Yeah, don't say that.
who seem to be able to handle things in the hundreds but not the millions, I think I can understand the millions.
Very well.
So,
You've been grilled enough. I mean,
Yeah.
many questions have been answered. I do want to thank you for coming in,
Thank
Robin.
you.
I appreciate
Okay.
you at least applying and willing to volunteer to do such
okay.
an important
Mhm.
function. And
Yeah.
not that it might impress too many, but I will tell you, I am a product of a vocational high school, as well as Newton North and Newton Technical, same time. That's how they worked. They were actually partnered together. Came out of there for electronics, and I went on to college because that's the way they prepared there. They offered the regular, I called it the, regular courses for your sciences, math, English.
Right.
So that you had the requirements you needed to go on. And I did go on, and I went into engineering. And I've since gone through business school. I mean, it's not like it used to be, 60 years ago or 70 years ago, when people would go to a vocational school and actually just come out and work, and that was pretty much it. They were pretty much set that way. Today's vocations, they don't stop when they get out of school.
No, they.
Many of them they require continued education. They require testing and all electrical. They require you to go in every 3 years. You got to be recertified. It's a different world, as they say. It's a different world we live in, and I think the vocational schools today are providing a lot different education than what they were doing 50 or 60 years ago, and even the short time ago that I was there, it has changed quite a bit. But they certainly provide a good opportunity for those that choose to go into that field. The cooperative effort, you see it in a lot of the engineering schools, the colleges. They do it for a reason. We do it at work now. I work for utility. We do that now with interns during the summer, trying to get them in, trying to acclimate them to the workplace, to give them that life skill while they're going to school. They get to know whether they really enjoy that type of work or not. It's very helpful to the student, very helpful to the company. And, we've already had kids writing back to us now asking if, they're getting ready to graduate, they're interested, are there opportunities? So I look forward in the future to having you come back if this becomes a positive appointment tonight, and coming back and reporting on some of the things you've gotten involved with, and maybe be able to answer some of the questions a little more detail.
Yeah.
So with that, I would like to...
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Robin Gold as the interim or member for the remaining period term of the Southeastern Regional School Totem board member.
Second.
Is that acceptable to the lawyers in the room?
So you're nominating Robin to fulfill the unexpired term that's going to expire this November.
Yeah.
And we have a second.
And we have a second.
You don't,
And I think that's good for both boards.
yeah, but seconds
But we
aren't,
need a,
you don't second a nomination
Okay.
anyway.
no. And we have a nomination on the table. Should suffice for both boards. I'll ask the selectmen. All in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous for the selectmen.
And I'll ask the school committee, all in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous as well.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Robin,
Thank you very much.
congratulations.
I hope I.
I would, now, I assume you need to be sworn into the office that you were
I assume.
appointed to?
I assume.
No? No, I say, but they do, so at your earliest convenience, report to the clerk's office downstairs.
Okay.
Now, Jamie, you can send a letter down for a combined, to let them know that your appointment was done.
Thank you.
And then if you could just present yourself to the clerk to get sworn in.
Okay.
And as they say, Roberta, I'm sure she's going to grab you on your way out the door. And you're going to have to take her all the way out into the stairway, because they have another meeting out there as well.
Okay.
And I'm sure she can
Thank
give you
you.
some of the
So you could
insights
both go in the ladies' room.
on what you're about to get into.
Okay.
So thank you very much,
Cynthia, you're
Thank
right.
you, Robin.
and good luck.
Thank
the
you,
best
Roberta, for all of your years.
Thank you, you're very welcome, it was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. They haven't gotten rid of me yet.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to catch up.
Sure.
So now we're going to go back to the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman?
Yep, as soon as I finish typing. So we can go back as far as the agenda. We pushed off the consent agenda, the first item being the statement of interest for an accelerated repair project for roof and windows at the Joseph A. Gibbons Elementary School. And the second item was the statement of interest for the replacement of or the addition to the South Elementary School.
May I interject at this moment to ask if this would be an appropriate time, and to defer to Dr. Rizzi, if you would be leaving to fulfill your other obligation for tonight? Well, like I said, if we handle statements of interest and we come out of that, Dr. Rizzi has. Okay. 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 I just wanted to open that up so that if this were okay. Okay.
Well, well, actually, the chair did ask me about that, and I'll defer to you if you'd rather do the budget. You wanted to maybe do the budget while Dr. Rizzi was here?
Well, her window would be an 8 to 8:30 type of thing, and it's almost 8 right now.
Okay.
So,
All
so
right.
I'm just saying we could do the statements of interest and then perhaps go into the discussion on the warrant articles if she weren't back. But you're going to stay, but it's your choice,
Okay. All right.
absolutely. Okay.
I think the previous segment is part of the.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
All right. So,
we're-
so with that, I mean, it was listed as a consent agenda,
Yeah.
but
But I think I
it's
have
going to
to
be
read the
more of a, I'm going to pull both items because we're going to have some discussion on them anyway.
Right.
So it can't just be going through. I'm sure there are questions, and
I'm
we
sure there
lost a
are.
member, so.
They'll return eventually.
I'll leave it to you, Madam Chair, if you would like to start with the Gibbons,
We would very much like to
Or-
start with the Gibbons.
or if you have the same agenda we have, it's the other one in there first, but whichever one you want to go
I have
through
the Gibbons in first, it's just I
All right.
didn't bookmark it, so I have to page through them to get to my starting point. I guess we started this process last night, and we spoke about them, although we didn't vote on them last night. We saved that for this evening because we wanted to make sure that we all had the same opportunity to ask the same question, or ask questions and get answers that everybody could hear. We started out by having a discussion on them without a motion. I don't know what your process typically would be. So referring back to you, I would like to talk about the Gibbons and what the plans are for the Gibbons in terms of
Sure.
where it falls within the facility master plan. Looking to my people who are around me. The Gibbons, what we are looking, to step back a step further, the window of opportunity to apply for a statement, to submit a statement of interest to the MSBA this year is a little bit different than it was in years past. The accelerated, last year they were all due on the same date in April. They processed the whole pool. They had to sort through which ones were accelerated repair, which ones were new and renovation, and it caused a great deal of delay. So this year they have decided that they are going to separate them into, it's the same application form, the same statement of interest, but if you're applying for an accelerated repair project, the deadline is actually this Friday to submit a statement of interest, February 14th.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. To submit a statement of interest for a new,
That was the accelerated.
that was the accelerated.
Right.
And then to submit a statement of interest for the a South School, in our case, the replacement or renovation is April 20-something, 23rd. So we're talking about them both tonight. We're hoping to be able to vote on both of them tonight. In the case of both of the statements of interest that you see in front of you, the South School in particular was an absolute word-for-word repopulation of last year's statement of interest. It was submitted. We hadn't put it as a priority. This year we will be listing it as a priority school. The MSBA keeps on file the electronic version of the old one, and when you go in with your new passcode this year, they ask you, do you want to repopulate it based on last year's, which is in fact what you see in front of you. For the Gibbons, what Mr. Harding had done was taken, because it is windows and roofs, and last year we applied for windows at the DAW and a roof at the west, he took the wording per se, changed the specifics as it dealt with the Gibbons school in terms of square footage and and the educational goals if they were different. And that is the statement of interest that you see in front of you for the Gibbons. So that was as a point of explanation as to where we are.
All right.
We very much would like to apply for the accelerated repair for the Gibbons. It is the very next priorities on our facility master plan. And if you have questions specific to that, Mr. Harding could certainly answer them.
All right. Mr. O'Regan?
I'm a big fan of maintaining the buildings because I think one of the if we were to travel back in time and relive our life as a community, one of the things we might ask for a do-over would be how we've maintained our physical plant. And because that's an ongoing issue throughout the community, and not just in the school department, we have built up quite a burden of projects that we need to deal with. So my biggest concern is how we time these projects in a way that we can afford to pay for. I tried to find the documents referred to in this statement of interest on the school website so I could be familiar with them for tonight's meeting. Couldn't find them. I asked the office to contact the school department to get a copy so that I could read it.
Of the facility master plan?
Yes. Didn't get a response. So that troubles me. I don't have a sense from the submission here of the statement of interest what the range of expense might be. I don't have a sense from this submission about when we would be looking to have this come on. That is, if it's approved and it's accelerated, when do we think we would begin to pay the bill, and what it is we think that cost would be. So it would help me quite a bit if you could touch on those points, because what I think the community expects responsibly from both boards is to not jam town meeting with warrant articles that are screaming in competition for the same dollars without both boards cooperating with a coherent set of priorities. Now, when you were here before the board last time, I expressed my frustration that these articles are petitioned in the first place. And I still am frustrated by that. I am of the mind that, until I heard that the deadline is Friday, I was of the view of asking us to not vote on this, because what I would like to see is the school building plan integrated into the capital plan that the town manager has put together, so that we can look at these expensive capital projects and make sure we can get them all done. And one of the things that I want to avoid is the potential of having so many projects hit the taxpayer that the taxpayer is overwhelmed, and some of the things we really need to do, I think we really need to do the Scouts School. I think the windows is something we really should do. I don't know need yet because I can't see the stuff. We foreclose that opportunity because as boards we haven't figured out how to phase it in. We have no choice but to deal with the police and fire station. No choice. We have, I think, a significant potential capital requirement to get the downtown done. Okay? We've got to figure this out, and we can't do it with projects like this that come before us, this is my own opinion, for approval that have to be filed in 2 days, and when we can't have access to the capital plan to review it, and when our staff can't integrate that capital plan into the rest of the community so we can phase it, and then so we can look at what the debt service costs are going to be, and then tie the debt service cost into what we think is revenue growth, and then maybe anticipate if and when there would be a need to go to the voters and say, we need to have, or ask you either for a debt exclusion or a 2.5 override, because the community is going to look at us and say, you haven't figured it out, and what's going to happen next? That's the biggest problem with petitioned articles.
Can before I lose, as you go down and add things to my list of things to answer to before I lose sight of them all, I would like to answer to the petition article thing, but after we talk about the SOIs if we can, just to keep the two topics.
They're not, I mean, they're separate.
They're separate. But the SOI, in fact, doesn't have a place for a dollar amount. It isn't what the state is asking for in this application. I do not know, in fact, where the facility master plan is on the school website, because quite honestly, in the past I've gone to the town website to where it's located there when I've needed an electronic copy of it. I can't tell you off the top of my head where it is, but I do know that it exists at least on one of our websites. I would like to have Mr. Harding come to the table, please, because I think you will be answering questions as to the cost. The cost for both of the Gibbons components, and they're listed separately as warrant articles, is in the warrant. And that is where I think that Joel will be able to answer any questions, because this kind of goes to the discussion that we had come for the other night and didn't get to finish about why the cost in the warrant isn't exactly or necessarily the cost of the project. So it's a tough thing when you're voting on it, but we have to do what the MSBA is asking of us, which is to estimate every possible worst case scenario for an expense, because they don't want to be caught short when they fund something. So.
And those are the same questions I think everybody on this side of the table is expected to ask as well.
Well, and we'd hoped to have been able to answer that question for you a week ago, Tuesday, when we came prepared with all the numbers, which I asked Mr. Harding to bring back with him tonight as well, because I think that that discussion certainly helps lead into this. As far as the timing of this, it is incredibly unfortunate, and it is incredibly unfortunate for a lot of reasons that the state opened up their SOI period sometime in mid-January and chose less than a month later to close it for accelerated repairs. And in that period, the facility master plan committee was scheduled to meet and was canceled due to snow. And so the process that we would have liked to have had in place didn't happen. But if we would like to talk specifically about the costs of the projects, this is the man who can answer your questions. So do we want him to just give us a brief explanation of the roof and the window costs for the Gibbons? And that might satisfy the discussion on the warrant articles as well for the Gibbons.
I mean, the amounts that are on the articles, it's a sneeze less than $4 million, aren't accurate.
Well, I wouldn't say they're not. They're going to be what we have to ask for in the case of the Gibbons. But as I said, I'd rather have Mr. Harding describe what the thought process is that went in the the entire process that went into this.
From the facilities master plan, we actually had secondary plans developed, both a roof management plan and a windows management plan, which dug down deeper than what the facilities master plan had done. In those two plans, the roof and the window management plans, they provided us with priorities, and they also provided us with estimated costs for replacement of our roofs and our windows. As you may know, most of our roofs have been done. We did 4 roofs prior to or between the MSBA program, when the MSBA program was transitioning from the DESE to the Treasurer's Office. So we have cost estimates based on those projects. The cost estimates that were provided to us from the schematic design after the MSBA got involved with the West School were considerably higher than what our study cost had come back at. So that's where the amount we had provided for the additional funding article. And same with the windows, as a matter of fact, at the Hanson and the DAW. Looking at the schematic design estimate for the DAW and the west roof gave us a percentage of what our study had given us versus what they now estimated. So that's how I came up with a number for the Gibbons. I used the study number for the Gibbons took the percentage of increase for the schematic design and added that to the numbers on the Gibbons, and that's how we came up with the article numbers.
And for an explanation, do you recall what the numbers were for the Daw roof, which was, I know, more than 5 years ago?
945,000.
So we're
yes.
talking a million, and it would probably be $1.2 million or something today.
Right.
And that you are in fact estimating almost double that.
Right.
But that some of the issues that drove that cost to escalate at the West, when the architect, did their schematic design and submitted their numbers, was they accounted for the removal of the entire mud job, the slope underneath the current roof, as opposed to what a contractor would typically do is go in and only replace what was in fact crumbling or in disrepair. So we see an estimate for the West School that is significantly higher when the reality may in fact be when the contractor goes in, they're not going to strip out everything that's there, they're going to do something slightly different. The Gibbons School has a totally different type of existing roof and may not be subject to that. We just don't know what an architect's going to come in and say for schematic design or apply numbers, and we don't want to be in the position, as we are this year, with having to come back, having put in an article and then come back a year later and say we need more. It's not a comfortable position to be in for both the West, the Hanson, and the Daw in terms of the added expense. Really had no idea what we were going to be facing. So that is why you see an estimate that is, I think, significantly higher on the Gibbons. But we do have to ask for it so that we don't find ourselves in that same position.
In what proportion do you, I know the warrant article is written in a way that basically says, don't count on getting anything, but commit yourself to doing it. What's your reasonable guess on a grant from the building authority?
In terms of, what's a reasonable guess at what it's going to cost or what the reimbursement will be?
Well, if you give me one, I could figure out the other.
Darn.
I went to public school.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that.
Our basic reimbursement rate is 52.4%, I believe.
But we don't.
Which is based on, that's all you will get under a repair project.
Right.
There is no bonus points under a repair project. Under a replacement project, there are bonus points where our percentage could go up as high as 65%.
But the cost of the roof at the Gibbons could conceivably cost anywhere from 1.2 million to 2.6.
One of the factors I understand in coming back for the other projects is, let's call it a transaction cost to deal with the school building authority. Mm-hmm. So how do you compare what the cost would be if we did it on our own against asking for the money and then paying more for the project?
My committee likes this because we did a hypothetical math problem last night. And we take, I think I used the Hanson, which was a Windows project, that was, say round numbers, $800,000, according to our Windows study estimate. In the old days, if we had done this project, we would have had to have paid $800,000 out of pocket. Going to the MSBA, they said, nope, we need to look at all the hazardous remediation and all the potential things that could happen. We're going to ask for additional to estimate an additional 400,000. It's now 1.2 million. But in really round numbers, they're going to give us half of that back. So we're going to pay 600,000. They're going to pay 600,000. In the past, we would have paid 800,000. So we're still, is it the 50% that we would have wanted? But that's still the worst case scenario, if you will. Oh, he's got a graph to go.
But it's not in color.
Yeah.
It was when I left.
Oh.
These 4 roofs, the first 4 roofs are the ones we did. This one is the one the MSBA wants to do.
Yeah. But we don't know it's going to cost that until the project's done. We know it's not going to cost more than that.
Will their criteria require you to put on a roof that's...
No. Same specification.
Yeah.
We have a system-wide specification.
And part of the cost of doing business with them is in the fact that we are in fact hiring an architect to do a certain level of schematic design that we wouldn't have had to go through that level of process before, and an owner's project manager, all who are looking, or the owner's project manager who's looking out for our best interest and is actually been very easy to work with. But there's a cost associated with that as well. That's the MSBA's
Well,
insurance.
One of the reasons that I think having a building fund is important is because on future buildings where the building authority doesn't require us to have an owner's project manager, I want us to have a fee-based project manager.
Absolutely.
Because I think if you, again, time travel would be a wonderful thing if we could do it.
Yeah.
Because if we
Totally.
could travel back in time for some of the buildings and do stuff different, one of them would be to hire a fee-based professional project manager, because in the end, it would have cost us a lot less,
Yeah.
and we would have had a better product.
Yeah.
So I get that part.
Yeah. But we are not going to be in a situation where we would be spending more money with the MSBA than we would have spent to do the project without them.
When did you know that you wanted to do these projects? Like, were these were all on the horizon through the fall, right?
Well, we've had,
Study done in like 2010?
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
So, I mean, I just want to, because I'm hugging all the time.
Yeah. I think you're asking the questions everybody wants to ask.
So, we talked about this last time. Next year,
Yes.
shovel this over to town hall earlier.
I have a proposal for next year. And hopefully it'll answer the question of the petitioned articles as well. I would really like to see us formalize a process by which we hold a joint meeting in late October or early November and have this discussion, have those warrant articles that we want to bring before, have that discussion before it is time to submit them, petition them, whatever the process will be, so that those questions can be answered. And write that in. That's a given, and that meeting is specifically for the purpose.
Anything that makes it work better, but the town charter puts on the selectmen the obligation to have a town-wide capital plan.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's something I've been, stomping on
Mm-hmm.
for, I think, 8 years now, and we're this close to having one. Town-wide includes school
It does.
department. What you're suggesting moves us into that, into that. And now I understand what the facilities master plan in 2009 was started for the school department, expanded out into the whole community, and then let's just say it didn't all get pushed through the process for the whole community.
Correct.
Well, it's time to take a plunger to it and get it through.
But I'd like Mr. Harding to address the capital plan idea, because he has in fact worked with the capital plan committee and can only speak to what his conversations have been.
I was invited and attended the capital planning committee meeting of January 22nd, 2013. I presented them all of this information that you're looking for, including the facility master plan. After a couple of hours of discussion of what we were trying to do and where we were trying to go, the committee at that time felt that the town and the schools should be separate, because the facilities committee was already in place, the feasibility committee was already in place, because of the different funding mechanisms that were available to the schools and available to the town. They felt they should be kept separate. So at that time, they did not put any articles in for towns or put any.
But they wouldn't.
projects.
That's an advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen on what the selectmen ask for their advice,
fine, but
leading
we
to.
have given-
I'm
we
not.
have-
I'm not saying.
Am I going to be able to talk or am I
I'm
not?
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We have given them this information. Whether they passed it along to the Board of Selectmen or not, I don't know. But we have given them our
Oh,
plan.
You'll have to repeat everything you just said.
No.
No, yeah. We have given them the plan that was developed by the facilities master plan for the replacement of the buildings, what we were going to do from this year, 20 years out.
Good.
So everybody should have it. In fact, you were talking about the facilities master plan. Mr. Fitzgerald left, but he presented a copy of the facilities master plan to one of the former town managers in April 29th of 2010 with a letter. So somewhere in the office here, there is
And on your website, I might add.
there is a copy. So,
Yeah. It's just that the frustration is that, we hear that these things aren't being done, yet we do what was asked, and we don't know what happened between when that information then comes back to you, what's come back, or what you feel is missing. And I think, again, a good schedule of 3 or 4 joint meetings a year that are timed specifically to meet some of these goals, regardless of what the capital plan committee is. You know, there's a lot of work that's gone into the facilities master plan, you can well imagine. And for them to condense it and take that and present it back to you, there's always a danger of what our intentions were with it being lost.
So the step, okay, the step that hasn't been completed yet with all of this work with the capital planning committee, whether the step that hasn't occurred is that whatever folks are doing, because the town charter requires that the capital plan come to the selectmen for us to review and vet. Mr. Hartman is eager, he's got...
There's confusion here. Facilities master plan and capital plan are not one and the same.
No.
We have a facilities master.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. We're obligated by the charter to do a 3-year capital.
Right.
And obligated by state law to do a 5-year capital plan. That is not the facilities master plan.
Right.
And what Mr. O'Regan is referring it to is the capital plan. And the fact that he wants to take our Excel spreadsheet and your Excel spreadsheet and combine them into one Excel.
Right, right.
That's what we always talk about.
And the goal is, okay, the goal is, one, in addition to what I've already said, is we put this combined, coherent document in the annual town report. So the town meeting members, when they are working, when they're looking at 1-year set of requests, can look and see what it is we think we're going to need 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, which is something we've never done.
Right.
And I think we are paying dearly for not having done that. So all you've,
Yeah.
and I know all of this is going on, but the step that we've got to do is to turn all of these studies and things into an actual concrete design. We haven't done that.
We need then the directive, the input to find out exactly what it is you need, because if we hear Mr. Harding's been invited to talk to the capital plan committee and that is fulfilling the obligation to talk about capital plan, and then we hear later, but you haven't submitted this, we don't know what this is. And in fairness, I think that there's just, it's a simple communication
Well, we can do
thing.
this because this is taking...
It is.
There is not a town-wide cohesive plan to
Oh, I understand.
maintain
I
or
absolutely understand.
replace all of the town's buildings. And that's, I mean, that's, in a nutshell, it's got to get done. We can't just have everything going this way or everything going that way. It's got to be blended, and I think the joint meeting to work it out and try and decide what to put in for that year, and that should preclude any other articles coming in by petition because they didn't get agreed to by the joint boards. And I think that's where we got to get to,
Right.
and hopefully we can get there to
I
move
firmly
forward.
believe we can.
And so the step is for the staff, the town manager, the superintendent, Mr. Harding, everybody, staff level, to take the studies, to take the facilities, all of these things, and present to our board, to your board, the overall town capital spending plan that the charter and the statute require, which converts the studies into priorities, because we cannot do all of, if we took everything the school, because I remember last year seeing that there were a number of elementary schools on the calendar that seemed to be wanting to be replaced, overlapping major improvements of windows and roofs. And I remember somebody asking, do you really think we're going to replace a roof on a building that it looks like you're going to want to replace 5 years later? I may have it wrong, but there's some overlap like that. And it's reconciling those things and setting priorities.
Ask us those questions, because I don't believe there's that kind of overlap, but yeah.
And the MSBA won't allow it.
Won't allow it, yeah. And we know they won't allow it, so we're not even going to go there. But
I've taken enough. I've taken enough time, but it's your superintendent and the town manager getting together and putting these, so that at least a year ahead of a warrant article for capital expenditure.
And that is not a problem.
It is in a capital plan that the Board of Selectmen, who's over here, actually considers and approves.
Do you have any more questions on
Ms.
these
Walsh?
items?
Well, I mean, the problem with being in a place as long as I've been is this was all done in the 80s. I was working for the school department at the time. And I was also on the Cedar Hill Committee. And we got done, we had it all made out, and we had it all integrated and everything, and then something catastrophic happened, and the whole thing has to be reshuffled. um, just because of the age of all the facilities. It's like living in an old house. You could be saving money in your capital plan for your house as a new kitchen, and then your boiler blows up, or the plumbing fails in the bathroom, or literally the floor falls down. So I mean, it's happening again, but I don't like the implication that in the past this was never done. It was done. It just, well, Prop 2.5 happened, and that blew everything out of the water. Because we just had to keep cutting everything just to keep enough personnel to do the basic functions of the town. And if the roof leaked, you just spent $1 at Pacheco Hardware and bought another bucket. That's how bad it was. So basically, we're just resubmitting previous projects to the MSBA.
Well, the Gibbons isn't a previous project.
But the South is.
Yes.
And they just don't have a button that just says, please repeat previous.
They do, and that's in fact what they did, but we have to go through the process
They need
of the
a new
vote.
vote and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just for sake of description on the Gibbons, we're talking a school that was built in 1970, 71.
71 it went.
Correct.
And the windows are original.
Yes, they are.
The glazing, the glass has been replaced in some cases with a
Plexi.
plexi, thank you, that's fogged. Everything's single glazed. The wind comes through, the water in some cases comes through. You know, it's just, like you said, it's important to replace these. What we've seen at the DAW in terms of the roof being replaced several years ago was a tremendous energy savings. We can't wait till the windows are done at the DAW. You'll have a complete tight unit. And the Gibbons, really those are kind of the two crown jewels in the school stock in terms of being newer buildings, and this will go a long way to help extend their life and their energy efficiency.
One thing, when I was reading, one of the problems with the Gibbons roof is pooling. So there's going to have to be parts of the roof that are pitched or filled in or leveled off, or.
When they replace a roof, they do pitch the roof to the drain.
And I think what the chair was saying previously is we don't know whether they're just going to take off the rubber, or they're also going to take the tar and the gravel.
Everything has to come off.
Yeah, that's what I mean. When I did my roof, you can't you can't put a third layer on.
Right.
So that's why, I mean, taking off that original roof, God knows how much that's going to cost, because it's such a different. It's not the same as just peeling something off.
Although the Gibbons is a lot better than the West in terms of it just being newer construction.
Well, because of the 20-year gap in when they were built. And the other thing I noticed going through the warrants is how much, do we know yet if the windows at the Gibbons have PCBs in the putty or the?
We do not, they have not been tested. Our assumption is they will not, because the DAW does not. So the DAW is a little older, just a couple years older. The assumption is they're the same age, so the Gibbons probably will not.
Oh, we actually use the same exact.
Well, it was a sister school, yeah.
Well,
They
it's
took the
more
DAW
the
plans and
construction
built them.
methods and the
It's
contractor.
just that I saw
yeah.
the bill for just one window at the
Yeah.
Hanson School.
Yeah.
$9,000 to, I guess, put a mask on and dig out the. I went into the wrong.
The good news at
business.
the Hanson is that the PCBs are isolated to.
Yeah, it seems to
one
be
small
just
wing,
that
yeah.
one area, but I can see
Remediation's
where your
expensive.
cost figure, you just can't, there is going to be a huge,
Yeah.
because we just don't know when they take up one roof to know even exactly what's underneath. We think we know.
What we do know, and to pacify this architect and to explain to him how easy this process would be, Mr. Harding hired a contractor to come out and essentially pop a window out of both the DAW and the Hanson so they could see the assembly methods. And in fact, those windows pretty much pop out nicely. The architect was able to go back and do his schematic design with a level of confidence that the replacement cost would be much better than he thought, because he was, again, planning for a worst-case connection scenario. And
Well, I know when I did Castle Walsh, it wasn't just the 2 layers. It turns out that some of the boards underneath had to be replaced. Obviously, they don't build a school roof the same way. But if there's been leakage in a particular area for a certain amount of time, there's a potential that some of the metal beams and things could be severely corroded. So I can understand why you can't just say it's going to be so much a square foot or it's going to be so much here, because we don't know until, I know they've dug some test, I can't believe it, but they do dig test holes in roofs. I guess it was at the middle school they've done some.
Yep.
And it's like drilling for water. I mean, this one's dry and this one's wet. I mean, you just don't know until you're in the project. So I can understand why you can't just give us a one figure and say, this is it, no more, no less.
Right. Well, we're hoping no more. I mean, that's.
Can't be no- it can't
Well,
be
no,
more.
I mean, yeah, well,
Yeah.
obviously you don't want
It's
to
just a
face
very high
town meeting
figure.
again.
Right.
But that's, I can understand, and all of us, I think, have been around long enough to know that virtually every project people have had to come back for. So the idea is aim high and hope for lower bids.
Well, we haven't, so it pains us to have to do that. But I think, are there any, I guess, further questions on the Gibbons?
Mr. Recupero?
Yes. The town manager, any thoughts or comments to add beyond what's been said already? No. Second question, I assume the Gibbons is going to stay in the queue for a couple of years?
Absolutely.
Okay, so might as well get going?
Yeah.
Okay, the last question is sort of, you know,
Mike?
come on.
Yeah.
Well, last question, this is sort of self-interested, but whenever someone puts a new roof on, it's always a great time to put solar on. I wonder if there's ever been any discussion about solarizing the roofs that you put on.
3 years ago, we did a study, townwide study of alternate energy. The price per square foot at that time for solar versus the payback period just was not there. We were talking a payback period of 30 to 40 years. We would not put it on any of our old roofs. We would wait until we put a new roof on.
That's just the price of solar panels has gone down dramatically.
It's dropped by half in the last 2 years.
What about renting the space for?
Can I just finish? So it might be something worth looking into, and I, again, I mean, I'm self-interested in it, not for financial reasons, only because I think it's a great technology to use.
We have to also be careful because a lot of our HVAC is on our roofs. So we have to get it up high
It's
enough.
heavy engineering. It's actually pretty intensive construction too, because but something just to make a phone call and see. And also the financing arrangements have changed in the last 2 years too. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
They did have a solar component when we went over to Norwood, right? When they did that school, they had done a solar component to an extent.
Yeah, and
Not-
the energy savings per year for the high school was close to $500,000.
Yeah.
Remember
So
that? It was
it's,
amazing. Just the savings.
But it's something that if you are looking at, you're going to get, now, when you say it's an accelerated program, obviously you think this is pushing forth. And if I'm not mistaken, when the other ones were presented last year, even though there was no guarantee that you would be accepted into the program, I think the presentation included the caveat that you probably wouldn't go forward without it.
We absolutely wouldn't go forward with
So,
The other part of that is the MSBA. They have now put us on a list for the high school. We are on the list for the 3 schools we mentioned from last year. They may not be prepared to give Stoughton any
to do
money.
more,
Right.
right. But I think Mr. Recupero's point is well-founded, that if you are looking at the Gibbons and you're going to be doing a roof, that maybe it's something to look at, that if you're not going to be doing it tomorrow,
Right.
maybe there is a component you could get done today or at the time you're doing that, which could help in the future. Because, as you said, if you're doing the west, the Hanson, if you get the Daw, there's 3. If you've got the Gibbons in, that's 4 of them. You're going after the south. That's your 5 schools. And if you're putting that much money in them, if I heard correct earlier, you're not going to be looking to replace these for some time.
Also extends
So-
the life of the roof.
So,
too.
right, and
Absolutely.
So you really, you know, you're looking at the high school now being in the program. If you got the CELT accepted, and with the project you have going, that's what you're really looking at for quite the foreseeable future
Absolutely.
as far as with the schools. So I think it would be worth looking at for anything that hasn't been done or isn't going to be done that soon, that it might be worth looking into any type of addition. Obviously, you'd have to come back for more money, but it could be, no, but it should be looked at, because in the long run, they will pay for themselves.
Right. And you know, the thing with the accelerated repair versus a new school building, I would imagine, and I don't know the specifics of a Norwood and a Whitman-Hanson, but that they was somehow built into their building program and applied for some MSBA reimbursement for the solar. Not the case with the accelerated repair, which are pretty much, you don't get to touch anything and enhance anything, you just replace what's there.
But it gives you the opportunity,
yes.
if you are doing the
If
roof.
we were to self-fund it, because I don't suspect the MSBA would participate.
No, but if you're doing the roof, now is the time to look at.
No, I don't disagree.
If you're going to do it.
I don't disagree.
You do it while you're doing the roof, that's
And Dr. Earle had brought up the lease programs. It's something that we had looked at again a couple of years ago, actually in conjunction with the library. And a lot of those programs are not conducive to public procurement law, and had a sense of other issues that
we went through that.
Yeah.
You know, over near your, what the road over there when the people came in, the one over near you, Schumann, and we had a proposal come before us, and there was two parts. It was a pilot program for one, and the other one was to see if the town would enter into an agreement for this. The timing for them to get their contracts and everything, we just couldn't get it done in time. They had to go to somebody else to get in on that portion of it. So it is hard when you go into the municipal.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to read the required form of the vote?
Well, I want to see if anybody has.
I didn't want to complicate the work that you have in front of you, but while we're here.
Are there any other concerns with the Gibbons proposal? If there aren't, then we should go into the.
Well, why don't we do the Gibbons and then do
Yes.
South?
Well, you do the Gibbons, and then we'll have to do the Gibbons because we have a separate vote for
Right. But if you would, for the Gibbons.
Resolved. Having convened in an open meeting on February 12th, 2014, prior to the closing date, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Stoughton, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 13th, 2014, for the Joseph H. Gibbons Elementary School located at 235 Morton Street, Stoughton, Massachusetts, 02072, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems, such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems, to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? The motion was made by Cynthia.
And then
She read the required form of vote.
Yeah, she didn't hear the second.
Yep, and Mr. Recupero seconded it.
No voice came out.
Okay. So you're trying to fool the microphone again.
So, if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
You must have said aye, I just didn't hear you. And that's unanimous.
I would like to have our vice chair read the motion.
Great. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on February 12th, 2014, prior to the closing date, the school committee of the town of Stoughton, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 13th, 2014 for the Joseph A. Givens Elementary School located at 235 Morton Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that an aye? It's unanimous. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that would, that should serve as authorization for you, Michael, to sign that, right? Just for the record. Unless, of course, you have any issues with what you read.
Mr. Chairman, we approved the South School SOI before. I mean,
Well-
shouldn't we just,
They require the.
No,
vote.
the authorization we gave last year has expired.
Yes.
So,
I just meant, I'll read the.
Okay.
read
Well,
the
We're
vote.
supposed to have a discussion.
I want to see, no, I want to see,
Well,
we
that's true,
we
Mr.
do have,
Cooper
we do
wasn't
have new
here.
members. I want to see if anybody has any issues with the South School. Well, last year, what's been explained is this was just a repopulation of, and that's why it says name a district, it's still sample district draft,
Yeah.
you know. We went through that last year, but, actually, I had a question on the other one, and I forgot to ask, but, you know, one of the questions in here is, has the district sold, closed, or otherwise removed from service a school in the last 10 years? Now, I guess I would only ask, when was the Jones taken out? And, wait a minute. Now, I've been told that's not included in any things for the MSBA because it's not considered a school anymore. You are using it for education that's required by the state. So does that qualify as not being taken out of service?
Let me answer this for you. Mr. Harding answered, it's even longer than I thought, 2005.
Okay, so it's,
More than 10 years, no matter what.
no, this is 2014.
No, I thought it had to be before that, because my son it would have been 11 years ago that he would have gone to kindergarten. It was closed when he went to kindergarten.
Might have been 2003.
Yeah. Right.
Preschool is, and in our case, the 100 children who are in that school are there in the mandated and required special education 3-year-old, 5-year-old program. And as such, it continues formally a school, and we do even, there is, in every way it functions as a school. The MSBA is very particular that their funding will only go to a preschool school. But that's very specific and idiosyncratic to their choice of what they will fund. But preschool, especially of the special ed variety, are required of every district. And in every other way, it's governed by DBSE and the ECO, Education Parents, related departments of DBSE. Now, separate offices, but they're essentially part of the same office as the state.
I just, well,
Right.
not being as in tune with the school side,
Yeah.
it was just something that I did notice, and I just recall a former superintendent making a statement at one point about how
Closing,
he had to
yeah.
close a school.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can get into semantics here, but that's why I wanted to
Yeah.
ask, because I did have a
But I
thing
had to-
marked there, and I just wanted to clarify because,
At that point, serve the function as a neighborhood school for the children who were using it as such.
mhm.
But it's still a required
Yeah.
part of our education.
Like I said, it was the year my
Just wanted to make sure,
our
that's all.
10th grader went to kindergarten. It was no longer
Mhm.
elementary, so that puts it past 10 years. Anyway,
Yeah. Time flies.
yes?
That would have just raised the issue about what did we do last year? If this got repopulated from last year. That's why, but like I said, that's why I was asking,
Yep.
because I knew it wasn't being used as its original
Yep.
elementary school, so.
Well, would you like me
With
to read
that,
the-
well, Mr. Recupero, any questions? Right, Mr. O'Regan?
Oh.
All right, Ms. Walsh, if you don't have any questions on the South, then
Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on February 12, 2014, prior to the closing date, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Stoughton, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 13, 2014, for the South Elementary School located at 171 Ash Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with the state and approved local requirements, and hereby further specifically acknowledges it by submitting the statement of interest form. The Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous.
Mr. Delinsky, if you would.
No problem. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on February 12th, 2014, prior to the closing date, the school committee of the town of Stoughton, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 13, 2014, for the South Elementary School located at 171 Ash Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements, and hereby further specifically acknowledge that by submitting this statement of interest form to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Do I have a second?
Second.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Certainly.
No.
I said yes.
So what I want to do is I want to thank you for your cooperation from all of you on the high school. We're going to have hiccups in our, okay,
Your mic.
sorry.
Especially for something like
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
The microphone is on. We
Well-
want to play this over.
Yeah, no wonder she didn't want it on.
We're going to have hiccups in our relationship from time to time. You know, part of it is just the system under which we work. I mean, we go after the same pool of money, but there has been you know, we've made almost historic strides in how the two boards work together. There is an incredible example in how the superintendent and the town manager have worked together on a joint budget summary on other budget goals. The turning point in what is, I think, a huge crossroads for our town in terms of a newer renovated high school was actually, and we heard this when the superintendent and I went to the State House was really the joint letter between the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. That really impressed our legislators. I think that the phrase that they had used is that in past years we wouldn't tell each other if our shirts were on fire. But
You would have probably lit them.
but this has really been a town-wide effort. You know, the legislators received thousands of, literally, emails, postcards, phone calls, petitions from really across town, and I really feel like it brought people together as well as both our boards. So I do want to thank you for that, and hope that despite the occasional hiccup that that will go together, that will go forward together cooperatively, and we're a stronger town because of it, honestly.
Yeah. But while we're on that, and I mentioned this at our last meeting, and I know the schedule, they had the 30 days for that initial, it was the ICC.
The initial compliance
right.
is
And I believe that's just something that Mr. Hartman is going to be able to move forward with.
It is signed.
Right. Right, but I mean, that's nothing that had to come before the board as far as that. That was just something the staff and the school committee had to address. But the next one was the 60-day, was for getting a building committee.
Yes.
And it's just something I need the board and the committee to keep that in mind, that we're probably going to have to get together again to do another joint meeting to start addressing this, and it's got to be done fairly soon. I think that was only a 60-day window, right? For
Yes, I didn't bring that paperwork.
I
with me, but that
have
sounds
it
about
here,
right.
but it is a, it was only a 60-day window, so we just don't want to lose sight of what we have to do on that after getting to the point we're at.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Mr. Hartman won't let us forget it anyway. So just something for the board and the committee just to keep in mind that we will need to get together again, and we should start thinking about some dates on when we'd be able to address these sometime in March.
So, yeah, so one thing is that having researched ahead of time, and it's kind of crazy the way it's done so differently in other towns, we've never had to appoint a school building committee, and there are a wide variety of ways in which it has been done, and it's based on the town charter. In some cases, because I had talked to folks in Norwood and Whitman Hanson and Bridgewater, in some cases there is an article that goes before town meeting that establishes a permanent building committee. In other cases, it's just the town manager that appoints the building committee. So there is a wide variety of ways in which it's done. So, you know, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure exactly how it's supposed to be done, but that's something that we have to, yeah.
All right.
So I just, right, yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right.
And and I have heard from many people, some of whom would be fine candidates for this because of their technical backgrounds for the school building committee. So I've just told them to kind of hang tight until we find out how it's supposed to be done. In the meantime, the feasibility committee is going to be meeting. I'm hoping that Maureen Dougherty, who has a lot of experience in school building, will be able to come. We'll kind of go over the issues. At that point, we'll probably dissolve ourselves, but that's what we need to have a discussion about. We may also set up some criteria that we can pass on,
All right.
you know, about what we're looking for in the candidates. This is such an important
Well,
committee,
it's
as you know.
April 3rd. I see
Right,
you
yeah,
pulled it up.
yeah,
So
I found
April
it.
3rd, and it's coming fast.
Yes,
So.
yeah.
But just as long as you keep us apprised of.
School building authority has limited what your local choices are.
Right.
who can be
Yeah.
It's very specific in who can serve and who can't serve, because they want certain skill sets. for
Yeah.
education. So this is not something that you would fulfill to the general public. And that's part of also what we're doing.
All right.
The other thing is quite frankly, you're asking somebody to make a 3.5 to 4 year commitment.
Oh, yeah.
Because you want the continuity to the process.
Mhm.
And this process takes 3.5
Mhm.
to 4 years.
Yeah.
All right, so you'll keep us abreast of anything we need to do then?
So April
Because I
3rd
know it
is
was coming. That's
Thursday?
April 3rd is the date for.
And that's a Thursday?
Sounds about right.
And I don't know that we have a final date for the feasibility committee yet, but we've already. Okay, okay, all right, okay. I'll also follow up with them, but thank you, Mrs. Shea.
Have to hit the sauce.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and I did mention it at our meeting, just to apprise the board, there is a 270-day schedule
Absolutely.
with, 8 particular items that need to be hit,
Yeah, I
so.
thought that, I mean.
Well, we were ahead of the
call a
game on
town
the-
meeting, for one thing.
We were ahead of the game on the feasibility, because
yeah.
we did that, I mean, as far as appropriating the money, we did it
Huge,
last year, so.
huge, yeah.
um,
So,
But,
anyway.
all right, like I say, I just didn't want to lose sight of that,
Absolutely.
April 3rd will be here before we know it, so.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, there was if I may, there was a letter we received last week making reference to a conference call.
Sure.
And I wonder if folks familiar with the process can explain what that call is. As I recall the letter, I don't have it with me, it requested times when the call would be had by the project coordinator for the MSBA.
That was from Susan, right? Sarah?
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
And since it went.
Can you address that, Michael? or-
Conference call is scheduled for tomorrow at 3:30, weather committee. Participants so far, and myself and
And that's the call referenced in that letter, so we're not,
from the project coordinator.
we don't miss something. It would be our luck. You missed a phone call.
Bob?
I have it.
You guys got a copy of that letter informing you of conference call?
They got a letter from the MSBA, who put on their list the selectmen's secretary, I believe. They put on the.
They
town-
sent
it
an
was-
email.
It was to the town manager.
They sent the email to the town manager.
Yeah.
It wasn't a letter?
Copy to the selectman's email. I get the selectman's email because I am a selectman and I have chosen to have
Really?
that email forwarded to me. That's how I became aware of it. Mr. O'Regan is in the same situation where we have requested any emails that come into the selectman's box be forwarded to us. That is open to Mr. Recupero and Ms. Walsh as well, if they can certainly have, actually, I think you could do it now with,
No, see,
we can certainly get that done, but
Well, we have, we have an internal issue within our committee because we weren't informed about such a conference call
It was a conference.
taking place.
It was a
Were you
request.
informed, Joyce?
Yes, I'm on the
Well,
list.
how come you failed to inform the school committee?
Because it was an email to the town manager to arrange a conference call between the MSBA and him, not us. It was
So you
not
still-
inviting
you still
either of these
should have
committees to
informed the
participate.
school committee.
So when did that come in?
A couple days ago.
So what's next?
I would like to, if we are going to discuss, or if there's any further need for discussion on the other 3 warrant articles, while Mr. Harding is here, and so that he can leave. Okay. Okay, oh.
well, I mean, I'll let the other members if they have any questions, but I think based on the earlier conversation on what caused the
Okay.
changes and so
Okay.
forth, I mean,
I just wanted
I
to
don't
clear it
think-
up so that
I
we
don't need any more
didn't have to be invited
specific.
back to
What
address
you
that
will,
again.
what you are gonna
Yeah.
have to do, no doubt about it, is make sure you have a solid presentation to town
Absolutely.
meeting, because they approved so much last year. Do you have any questions on the increases that we saw?
Okay.
It was caught on your button.
Yeah.
you know, as far as the warrant articles that come in, Mr. O'Regan?
Yeah.
Satisfied, Ms. Walsh?
I just, what is the, what was the student, well, I guess I saw it somewhere, the student population, October 1st, 2013? When we have to report that to the state, I think it might have been in the SOI. Oh, that was just for the particular school.
For that particular school.
Yeah.
So, I was just thinking, well, it's the budget is for all the children. How many is all?
That would would need to wait till the superintendent comes back. The entire, they just stepped out to discuss 39, 38, 70, depending on what date you pick for reporting.
Oh, well, I said October. I know that the date
Date,
is
yeah,
October 1st.
yeah.
As of October 1st, that would be, 38 something.
Yeah. And is that up from last year or down? No, it's usually less than 100 up and around the same thing for quite a few years. They showed the population that media was talking about, town population has been static for 30 years. So,
Okay, well, I appreciate, like I said, that the opportunity to be able to discuss those and answer any questions.
Well, no, but I think your earlier explanation on
The Gibbons informed.
with the way the process went and how much more you had to account for.
Well, then I would like him to be
No,
able to go.
because, yeah, I mean, because
She works
'Cause he
for
may be up
MSBA.
plowing snow at
She's their
2
in-house
hours.
project coordinator.
we didn't have any,
Make
further-
sure
I
that-
appreciate you coming, Joel, and
Oh, they should- I just wanted
we
to make
appreciate
sure
the,
that, you know, whatever
the additional
doesn't-
information on
What's
where
the word
you,
on snow?
'cause-
What's the word on snow?
Yeah.
It's gonna snow.
because I don't know.
Gee, Joel.
it will snow somewhere,
Clerk Rose,
a certain amount.
Sent this,
We
Oh, good.
are not going to make a decision tonight.
Well, that would be good if we're on, I mean,
Well, the decision is we're not going to make a decision tonight.
no, but
Yeah.
for anybody
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
watching, there will be no decision made on,
Still not,
you get
on,
there.
school being,
Right.
on or off until tomorrow.
the screen glows, so.
It's only 9 o'clock, they might still be up.
I would like to know, by the way, how come the school committee gets to drink bottled water and we have to drink filtered town?
We came from the,
We could,
Mr. Delinsky and I came from negotiations, and this is what we are fed at negotiations.
I do the filtered water because Jamie provides it, and I don't want her to feel bad when we always bring in a bottle, and-
Yes.
which I fill from my refrigerator.
And I'm
I
real-
buy
I'm
filtered
a real
as well.
hypocrite.
I
I'm
feel-
drinking
Yeah.
Pepsi.
Wow.
Um,
You know you're not supposed to reuse the BPA
I'm not
bottles.
supposed to have it, my
Oh,
heart
geez.
rate so well.
It's gonna get you, it's gonna
I
get you.
drink tea.
So,
I want
so
decaf,
you, were you all set with that as far as
I
the
still
call?
drink
Okay.
All I wanted to do was make sure that that
Thank you.
was covered.
Yeah.
Because Murphy's Law.
Well,
What phone call?
well, we want to, I mean, just to make
No,
sure that
I just
those
think-
that needed to be were going to be on the call,
I
that's all.
appreciate being informed, but I rely on Dr. Rizzi and Mr. Hartman to do the jobs that they've been
hired.
hired to do.
Yes,
Right,
absolutely.
no, but it was just a matter of
I don't have. to
who was
listen-
really being looked for to be on the
sit and
call,
sit
that's all.
down and listen.
So with that,
With that,
we have finished our SOIs, and that would bring us to the budget review.
I thought that's what we were just asking each other.
well, we actually asked Dr. Rizzi to come, you asked Dr. Rizzi to come and give a explanation of the process.
If, I'll remind my board members that when we went through the budget, the question was asked, you want the school side to come before us and at least give their thoughts on their budget, and the consensus was yes, to have them come in, thus we asked them to come in and do it this evening, so.
I probably
Oh.
was,
Wait, no, there's one here,
I was probably
there's one here.
in the minority on that one.
Well, that's, you know what, we're gonna just take a couple of
Minute break.
here to get
Good idea, stretch.
stretched out. Cameras are rolling. We
And it
We
was
just
actually
took
10 minutes.
we just took
so
a
how
quick,
we can run
quick,
10
ri-
minutes.
And your
quick
chewing is on
respite
as
to
well.
stretch the leg. So, So with that,
No, that's 20 minutes.
we're looking at
Now we're in
the
the
school
warrant.
budget. At the Selectmen's request, we had asked if we might as well get the budget done. When I corresponded with the chair, we kept getting more and more involved with what was going to go on, so we're at the point, we are at the point with school budget review. So the intent was to have you come in and just give us some thoughts and what went into putting the budget together and so forth. And
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Rizzi.
Well, good evening. So I'll just draw your attention to this lovely photograph. Right. This
I
is
have that in color.
Copies are available.
There's a so
Autographs can be
every
done.
year the presentation of the budget evolves, changes a little bit, and some of the things that we talk about change because our needs change and the economy changes. And so each year it's a little bit of a different document, but it's been a great pleasure for me to work with Mr. Hartman since he's gotten here. And as we recognize that all of the different parts of the town are inextricably connected, and everything we do impacts everything else we do, and the quality of our public safety is related to the quality of our schools and the various initiatives that people in different segments of town are moving forward, the master planning committee, the work towards the library, the work towards replacing Stoughton High School so we can provide 21st century programming, all the talk about downtown. All of these things work together to make Stoughton a more vibrant place, a place people want to come, a place that will attract middle-class families, a place that so many of you have been talking about creating, building for quite a long time. So we see all the things we do as deeply interconnected, which is why we wanted to work together on this document, and we've been working really closely together on a lot of things. The budget planning process is a year-long process, and we look at all kinds of data points when we decide what is it that we're going to prioritize, what are we going to ask for, what do we need to do. So the goals and the vision of the school committee members, the needs and input of the administrative team at the school department, so all of the principals, the department heads, all of our administrators, they all have input into the budget process. A lot of what we have been doing in the last 3 years or so has been based primarily on 2 factors, and we've just added a 3rd factor. So one is, I don't need to remind everybody that basically the bottom fell out of the economy in 08, 09. And during that period of time, we had to cut many programs. We had to cut many staff members. We ended up losing about 40 staff positions during those 2 years of budget cuts. We would have lost more if it had not been for the ARRA money that came from the federal government, which actually helped us to protect 14 teaching jobs. So we would have lost closer to 60 positions during that year or 2 if it hadn't been for the backfilling in of that federal money, which really was something for which we're incredibly grateful because it prevented a further devastation of the system. So we've been working from a 3-year educational plan, a 5-year strategic plan, which is up this year. So that's where a lot of our long-term guiding vision came from. The 3-year plan, which was embedded in the 5-year plan, was focused on 21st century needs and skills. This is the 3rd year of that plan, and so that plan is going to rest now. In the meantime, the state changed the process by which they expected us to do planning, and so we are now required to have a 3-year district improvement plan. That plan was underway, and we are now actually in the planning stage for the 2nd fiscal year of the 3-year triennial plan. So right, Joyce is holding up a little org sheet of our planning process.
This is on our website.
So the 5-year strategic plan, which is the way districts have generally planned over the decades, was guiding us up to a point. The 3-year more focused 21st century plan guided a lot of our budget decisions. The cuts were a necessity, and we tried to cut during that period with the least possible damage to the system. But there were things that we lost that needed to be replaced. So in the last couple of years, what we've done is we've looked at the 3-year 21st Century Education Plan. We've looked at the things that had to be cut and what of those things most needed to be replaced. We've looked at the things that came up for us in the state district review. And then sometimes things will come up that must be incorporated into those things, even though they might not have been on the table to begin with. And those things include the state mandates, which we're now switching to the Common Core curriculum. We're really quite far ahead of the curve on that, but it's a major project and it is expensive. The teacher evaluation system, which has been handed down from the state, which is expensive, complicated, and very different from what we were doing before. We always operate under certain mandates, the requirements for special education. And then when we look at our assessments and the scores and the various kinds of information on how our students are doing, we identified that there were some things in the area of special education that we wanted to address. So the things that are in the budget this year that are new from last year, some of those things are replacements, and some of those things are addition of reading teachers, of special education teachers, or staff of that sort for certain aspects of our special education program. And many of those positions were cut. Some of you might remember the days when we had special education liaisons, people in every building who just took care of the meetings and so on. Those tasks have been, they were spread around and shuffled in reorganization and so on. So we look at those things, those needs, and we put all of those things together. And then we take an eraser and a red pencil and we go through every single budget, every single item, every single dollar that each of the administrators or people who to whom it is charged to present a portion of the budget for consideration at the budget hearings, where can we cut? So then we cut every place that we reasonably feel we can. And it is through that process of building and then trimming that we get to a number that the school committee feels that they can vote on and pass on to the side of town for the 12/31 deadline. So that's our process, which has been the process for certainly as long as I've been here, with the modifications that come up every year as our circumstances change and our needs change and new things come online. 7 years ago, nobody saw the Common Core coming. No one saw the new evaluation tool coming. No one saw the responsibilities that we would have for homeless students based on the number of people who are becoming homeless. The requirements for teaching students whose first language is not English. So some of the things get handed to us to do. Some of the things are part of our planning and visioning process, and some of the things are still part of the long process of recouping from the worst of the Great Recession.
You can keep that if you'd like.
Well, I'm just curious what was there. If it's on the site, I'll find it.
It is on the website, yes.
Yeah. And linked to it are all the documents that it references that basically create this circular chain of decisions and data that inform other decisions. And
Mm-hmm.
So the Common Core, how did that affect what you need to do? I'm not really all that familiar with it. I've heard it. I've seen a little bit about it. Could you?
Well, in the years of No Child Left Behind, every state was expected to reach a certain standard by a certain time, 2014. We educators often laugh about it because by 2014, everyone was supposed to be above average. The federal government moved, the federal government moved away.
How can everybody be above average?
Aha.
Good
You see the flaw in the plan.
There are no bell curves.
Right, right.
Lake Wobegon.
Yes, yes, Minnesotans.
This was the second President Bush.
Correct.
Yes.
there's always going to be somebody that's below average, but I'm just trying not, I'm trying not to touch that. Yes. By the way, there's a very robust new study showing that actually the achievement in public school is higher than that in private school or charter schools, and it's something we've suspected for a long time, but now it is definitely supported by some really, really nice research.
There's been a lot in the Globe about it.
But anyway, so we had, to meet those federal standards for No Child Left Behind, Massachusetts developed over a long period of time with a great deal of work by a lot of people, the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. And they were put in place and the MCAS tests were attached to them. And they go from kindergarten through 12th grade, and they're very specific in every single subject. So they're Mass curriculum framework books in every single subject. And our teachers over that period of time, 90s to early 2000s, learned them, designed lessons around them, pacing charts around them, and our system was considered the best system in the nation, and we got the best results with it. However, No Child Left Behind, as it was coming to an end, for all the reasons it was not working, was replaced by a new system of accountability, and the states who were willing to adopt the new set of Common Core standards were also able to access a different level of money from the federal government, so our State Department of Education elected to adopt the Common Core, and quite a number of other states are also doing so. The Common Core standards were largely modeled on ours, but they're quite different. And things move basically down to younger ages. So where we've thought that it was important for students to be proficient, bye Fitzy, proficient at reading and doing reading to learn, as opposed to learning to read in 3rd grade, that has moved down now to 2nd grade. So we're going to be looking at children having to read earlier. The standards, to some extent, have some of the things that are good about them. They focus on more on higher order thinking, analysis, things that we have been teaching for a long time, but they're built into the standards in a way that if there are people who haven't been teaching that way, there are opportunities to do that. But it means that everyone in every grade has to change some of what they're teaching, where in the year they're teaching it, and then they have to write all new lessons to go with that, and the pacing has to be entirely different, and the assessments all have to be new to go with those standards, and different things have moved from grade to grade. And in general, children have to be able to do more, and they have to know more at younger ages. If I have to say there was one thing that you could point to that's significantly different from the math standards, that would be one thing. Every grade, every subject, every day, every week, the entire 180 days, different. And you have to write them and implement them while you're teaching without really getting a chance to have a pilot period. So you come in September and you're teaching a whole different set of standards from what you had left in June, somewhat analogous to doing heart surgery on someone whilst they're running a marathon.
May I ask Dr. Rizzi to just answer a little bit further into that, because I think one of the things as we monitor the listservs and the emails from all the other school committees is that a lot of schools committees are struggling with their budget to meet the requirements of the Common Core. And as you know, Stoughton, because we were a race to the top school and had to address some of these things a year earlier than the general population, has put in place, I think, a really proactive approach to meeting that need, which is why you don't see a huge hit in the budget for Common Core and for curriculum. Because between the electronics, the smart boards, and Mr. Ford's quite impressive curriculum, which I'd like you to go into, I think that we are really well suited to move forward with that without impacting the budget in the way that some other communities have to deal with.
Right, and we saw this coming a couple of years ago, and one of the things that we have built so that we have not had to buy a tremendous amount of new resources is an in-house curriculum website. So all of the teachers who have lessons, who have
Fantastic.
resources, who have PowerPoints, who have videos, who have reading material, original sources, they have all pooled those. So you can go, if you're a new teacher or a substitute, you can go to third grade reading, and there's a whole list of materials that have all been compiled in one place for the teachers to use. So that's given everybody a lot of things to work with, and that's been helpful for us. A lot of the money has gone into the professional development and in the teachers sitting down and rewriting all the lessons to go with the new standards.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper, any, Mr. O'Regan?
What is it that you? I said, what is it that you want that can't have? But that's we don't we don't have time for that. When you were going through the budget process, I appreciate trying to go back to 2008. That's about the time. It's a little. I'm trying to think of when my daughter graduated. It was 2008 or early time, isn't it?
It was 2008 that she graduated, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
2006 for your son.
Yeah, thank you. What are their names? No. So, so I get going back, and my wife taught for a number of years, and as things were in the crunch, you know, it came home about how many of the supports for the classroom and removing those supports for the classroom affected the quality of instruction in the classroom. And the kids pay a price for that, because whether it's a discipline problem or just getting the forms collected, the simplest or the biggest, all of those are subtractions from time on task in education. And you're not back yet to that. So I'd like to find out in getting back to where you were at a 2008 stage, are you halfway there at this budget? Are you 3/4 there? How much further do we have to go?
It's a difficult thing to calculate, but since there have been significant cuts and sometimes restorations, but you know, budget fluctuations since going back to Prop 2.5, 1982, right, I think? So people have tried to quantify how long does it take to restore cuts. And the most accepted formula is for every year of cuts, it takes 7 years to restore them. I would say with this budget, we are about halfway back. There are positions in maintenance, custodial, secretarial, and particularly in aides and assistants that we are not back to that percentage of restoration, but we have not targeted in exactly the same. So we're putting things back into areas where we see the most impact, which isn't to say that there is not tremendous impact in all of those areas.
So what was your focus in restoration for this year, and where are you looking to? I know it's too early, this is this year's budget, but between this year and maybe for folks who are watching and us in town meeting, some sort of sense of continuity of what was accomplished in last year's budget, what does this year's proposal do, and then where would you take it for next year in the drive to bring the system up?
The biggest focus this year is in special ed staff restorations. So that would be, I'd say, the biggest place we went this year. Last year we added 2 positions because of the new ed evaluation system and having to do more observations, and because of the Common Core. So that was and this is something that we still have to do. One of the things that we cut so that we would not have to cut classroom teachers and raise class sizes, there was a whole layer of support. Math coaches, literacy coaches, people who are master teachers and perhaps have either no teaching load or a reduced teaching load so that they can work coaching teachers in the classrooms and core subjects. All of those jobs went, and we have not really made a dent in replacing those. So that would be a place that we would have to look. There's a layer missing that hasn't gone back in at all. A lot of restorations in special ed this year. last year, we replaced, or last year, so for the year that we're working in now, in last year's budget, we put back a music teacher in the middle school. And that went quite a few years ago, I think maybe 10 or a dozen years ago. But we wanted to take because of the size of staff in the middle school, there were a lot of what were called activity periods, which were not particularly instructional. And we wanted to add an extra layer of instruction, which meant that every teacher had to teach an additional course. But to fill in that schedule, we needed another teacher. So half of a language teacher and a music teacher gave us just enough faculty to be able to really improve that middle school program. And so that was, and we put back a middle school guidance counselor so that there was one per grade. So those things were kind of the biggest focus of the last year's budget. When we're looking at this year's budget, we're going to do the same thing. We'll start to get data. As the tests come in, we'll see how are the students doing, and if the things that we're doing need tweaking. So one of the things that you see as the work becomes harder and the standards become more rigorous and go down to lower ages, that you find more children that need more help. So for these reasons, we have put in a number of remediation programs and enrichment programs in the morning and afternoon hours. And we have in the 3-year plan an increase each year to the number of offerings and seats in those programs that we'll be able to offer to keep children from falling behind, but then to address, we get the test scores back faster than we used to. So when we get a set of tests, we can analyze them quite quickly and see this number of students has an issue with this particular skill set and put them into an afternoon program to address that with a 4 to 6 to 8 week turnaround, so that just gives them extra support so that they don't fall far behind in the general classroom. So those are some of the things, and we'll evaluate them and expand some of those. And we'll go back to the list.
How is the parent outreach program working out?
Really, really well. That was an initiative from last year, so this is the second year. And I think that people have responded to it really well. They're running a lot of programs. They're doing a lot of workshops on various curricular things, and so I think that will be, people really like it, and it's going very well.
How are you measuring success in that program?
The number of parents that come to various things that the school offers. So the number of parents who will come to curriculum nights, or who will come to reading nights, or who will come to various programs that the schools offer.
Last question I have
It's
is
bringing, the real purpose is to get more people to come in, and then in certain areas of the population to try and bring in folks who have not felt welcome to come in. Maybe they didn't feel like they could approach the schools at all. As you probably know, in most cases, there'll be a fairly small percentage of parents that will come to parent conferences, and those will be the ones whose children maybe need them to come the least. And then a certain percentage of parents who do not come to those things, and then the question is, well, what can we do, and how can this level of parent engagement reach out to those people, ask them why they're not coming, what they need, and try and get them to come in.
what are you doing to find out, monitor, or assess the effect on the children of this engagement? Do you track the parents involved in the program and match them against their children and see whether there's a performance change on the children? Doing any of that kind of metrics work? Or?
We haven't yet, but that would be the next place to go. We know from all different research that's been done that the more engaged a parent is, the more successful children are going to be. And the reason we started the parent engagement program was I was working with the former union president on this particular initiative, and we knew that we could expand the day into the morning, get kids in earlier, help them with their homework, in the afternoon, bring them in, and we've seen in some very, very poor urban areas that the most successful programs are the 7 in the morning till 7 at night programs. Because basically what you're trying to do then is supplement for what a child with more resources would get at home. And you can do that, and it's very, very expensive, and it can be very successful. But in the end, if the parents are working with us, that's something that is going to make a lot of those. Then you can spend time teaching kids in the ways that we would like to teach them rather than helping them catch up from the very beginning.
Last thing I'm concerned about is activities, and one of the most regrettable things that the budget crunches have cost is activity fees.
We had fees before that, and they didn't change during that period of time. So the only two fees that went up were the swimming and hockey because of the rental of those facilities, because we don't have those facilities on site. But the other fees from when I came here as assistant superintendent 7 years ago, there was not a change in those during our downturn, and we're still lower than a lot of our surrounding communities, and we didn't really lose any programs. So we didn't lose teams. We lost some after-school activities, a couple of clubs, some advisorships went, but we did not lose any teams.
And how is participation?
I can't tell you exact numbers, but really very good.
It's
very
high.
good. Very, very good in athletic activities and very, very good in our musical activities.
So do you see a risk of involvement by the children because of their activity fees, or is that?
It's a very hard thing to test for because it's very difficult to test a negative.
Yeah.
So I have to believe, just on the basis of common sense, that the fees, even though they're not as large as in some places, but that's really very relative. Fees, by definition, are going to be a barrier for some kids.
Right.
If you made a program free, how could it not be that you wouldn't have more participants? So that would be very difficult to actually test, but it makes common sense to me. But one of the things that we are putting back in this budget, the proposal for next year, our remediation programs and our enrichment programs this year they're running, and people are participating in them. But we believe, and we have been told by at least some parents, that the transportation in the afternoon is a barrier. So we're putting late buses back so that isn't a barrier. There might be other barriers, but there won't be any cost for the program, and transportation will not be the thing that will prevent you from being a participant.
And there is not a one of us who would not like to see fees disappear. But I think our staff, our music director, the teachers, the coaches, the athletic director, do a tremendous job at identifying those kids who they know want to participate, but for whom fees would be a barrier. And the booster group and the POPs group, and everybody has really stepped up. And
to
no
help with
child
that.
we'd like to think is excluded.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Colombo.
Sorry. One more question. No.
You picked up on that.
Well, you
Ms.
know,
Walsh?
I mean, I love talking about these things, so this is actually
Yeah,
great.
that's a secret. Yeah,
This is great.
Couldn't tell.
I think I only got up to 8 final questions, that's all.
One more question.
Ms. Walsh?
No, I don't have any questions. I've been listening to the discussion, obviously. This is my area of expertise, so I don't have any questions.
So you're all set, Mr. Cooper?
Absolutely.
All right. All right, well, thank you very much.
Anytime.
Appreciate the time to come out.
No, my pleasure. Picked a good
Tell
night.
us some
No
of the
snow
things-
yet.
Tell us some of the things that you run into.
You want to tell us about tomorrow before you leave?
You know, this is a tough
We already
one.
announced it.
I'm
We already
usually absolutely decided by this point in the day, and I'm able to give parents an opportunity to plan. And this is just a really, 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 really tough one to call. So I can't call it yet. Yeah. Well, I tell you this, there will be weather, but
There won't be snow on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
Well, when Mr. Harding was leaving, we did say that there wouldn't be a decision until tomorrow morning, so.
Yeah, he did.
Hopefully, anybody who was listening picked up on that.
There haven't been any decisions in any district except Waltham.
Yeah, they're looking to get
And some of
hammered.
And the
far-
western.
The far western.
Yeah, I
places
think
where
Georgia
they're looking
canceled
at-
Monday.
Yeah.
I think they canceled for the rest of the winter.
Yeah, it's the start time that's hard to determine.
Yeah, because I think Waltham's already out, right?
Yeah.
They're expecting to get
They were
the
the
invite.
Oh, those wall fans.
first public school in
They're
the,
the
Well,
only ones.
well,
Toughing it up.
that's why I told them I was working at home tomorrow.
You're not going anywhere. to executive session.
Thank you
Governor
very
hasn't
much, Dr.
called
Bisson.
anything yet either.
No,
Yes,
no. Well, with that, that gets us through the regular agenda, if you will, and the only other item on there was for an
Petition article?
executive session pertaining to collective bargaining. And,
Oh, I thought we were going to do the articles after the executive session.
no, if we're gonna, if we're,
I mean, we, obviously, we don't have to do the two Gibbons ones.
I had asked before Mr. Harding
No,
left if
when,
we wanted to have discussion on that so he could be involved.
no,
Yeah.
I had asked if there were any questions on the additional monies and everything being requested, and I thought everybody said they were all set with it,
Oh,
so.
okay, great.
I mean, if you had any questions,
I can-
now would be
No,
the time to
no,
do it.
No, the executive session sounds
Yeah.
luscious.
And reason number,
Whatever,
do you
collective
recall off the
bargaining.
top of your head? What reason number is this, 3?
The number 3.
So, Rule 3 for the executive session exemptions is what we're using to go in, and I'm going to poll the board to go into executive session, and we will be adjourning from the executive session. Mr. Recupero? Ms. Walsh?
Aye.
Mr. O'Regan?
Aye.
And the chair is aye.
I will be polling my board to go into executive session, and we will be adjourning from executive session. Dr. Earl? Ms. Sauvanet?
Yes.
Mr. Dolinsky?
Of course.
Dr. Brown? And yes for myself.
I noticed the selectmen said aye, and we said yes.
Let's switch it up.
Yeah.
We're Old Navy.